Thank you, Mr. Delozier. Good to be with all of you. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here with all of you today. Most of the time I find myself chained behind a desk, and I'm an old football coach. You'll see that come out as we proceed. Sorry if you don't like football. But now these kinds of opportunities when I actually get to talk to a group of students, I find to be tremendous. I just don't have a lot of practice, so you'll have to extend some grace to me. It's a beautiful set. Most of you, I presume, are in the play in some way, shape, or form. Is that right? I see. Very good. Well, look forward to hearing about how that goes. And grateful for the work that you put in here at Chesterton. This is the founding school, and my former institution, my former place of employment, the University of Mary, of course, welcomes every year a good number of graduates from Chesterton Academy. So from my time at the University of Mary working with Monsignor James Shea, deeply familiar with what occurs here. The great quality education you get here and how hard it is for all of you who are here. You put in a lot of work, and the results are very clear when you go on to university. As Mr. Delozier said, I'm here to speak to you about what comes next, about if you do intend to go to college, how you can make sure you navigate that process well. I understand that you don't have an in-house, so to speak, guidance counseling office who helps you navigate that process. So I'm here to provide some of that for you today. I will not speak exclusively about St. Mary's University of Minnesota. I may only use this as a passing example every once in a while. But I will try to get through this presentation of material rather quickly so that then I can get to any particular questions you might have, either about the process and how to navigate it, or about St. Mary's University of Minnesota, or any other of the schools that you're interested in. I suspect many of you are interested in a number of schools that I've visited many times through my work in Catholic higher education. So a lot of the Newman schools, Ave Maria, Benedictine, Thomas Aquinas College. I've been to many of them, so happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process as well. Good. I'm also going to try to get through this content really, really quickly, because if you have specific questions about content I find much more interesting, I'll get there rather quickly, okay? So let's dive in, shall we? I hope that we can begin with an opening prayer. The institution I represent, St. Mary's University of Minnesota, we are founded and sponsored by the De La Salle Christian Brothers. So in addition to the sign of the cross, we invoke, our invocation to prayer is, let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. So I'll invite you for that. I'll say, let us remember, and we'll all say together, we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, please stand. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. Good and gracious God, we pause today to give you thanks and praise. Thanks for the gift of great education from people who know you. And we ask that you would be here in this room with us. Send your Holy Spirit, a fresh outpouring of the Holy Spirit to all of the minds here assembled. May all these young people that you've gathered here at Chesterton Academy hear your voice, what it is that you're asking of them, what you're calling them to through their giftedness, through their gifts in this next stage in their life. Guide them through this discernment process. Help them to be at peace and trusting in your will in all things. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you very much. I start both with prayer and then with this quote because students, the one thing that I've encountered about students who are just getting into this process, and especially as they get into their senior year, is it can be stressful. Are any of you experiencing this potential for a college search with stress and anxiety? Seeing a few nodding heads. Okay. The most important thing you'll get out of this education here at Chesterton Academy is your faith. Your faith and your trust in divine providence. Hear this, if you get nothing else out of this talk, this is what I want you to know. God has a plan for your life. You don't have to fear this process. You can't mess it up. He's got you every step of the way. So because you're at this place and because I'm speaking to you here at Chesterton Academy, I can say that where I couldn't say it if I was at Woodbury High School, next to where my kids and I live. Okay, we don't go there, we go to St. Agnes, but you get the idea. So I'm able to encourage you in that same way, right? That you can have faith that God will guide your hand even when you know nothing about it, and that He's with you as you go through this discernment process. So I hope that you can take that as at least the one most important thing. You cannot screw this up. He's got you covered as long as you remain attentive to His will throughout the whole process. So opening remarks would be to give all of this process to God. He has a beautiful plan for your life. Sometimes you'll know just a tiny sliver of it. And I'm hoping that today just gives you a little bit more context too, just about how to go about that. But the first thing is to focus on your conviction about his and trust in him. Next, these next 2 years are particularly important for people like me who actually determine whether you can go to our university. Okay? Most of the institutions, well, a number of the institutions here in this country are not terribly selective, and I'm confident that you will have no problem getting admitted. But there are some hyper-selective institutions across this country. And for those institutions, if you're on the bubble, how you perform in your junior and senior year will play a significant role in whether you get accepted. I'm thinking, for example, I'm not sure if any of you are looking at Hillsdale, for example, right? It's a very good institution. They are highly selective. That is one institution where if you do well in your final 2 years, that will pay great dividends to actually getting you that acceptance decision over somebody else. Okay? So do well in these final 2 years, and then follow this timeline that I'm about to go through. I'm going to talk too fast, so if I go too fast over something, you got to raise your hand. Because this content, admittedly, for me, it's kind of boring. I talk about this a lot. To me, it's second nature. If any of it is confusing to any of you, or if it's actually exciting and interesting and you need a little bit more context, just wave at me and make sure that I spend the time that you need to actually process the information, all right? Not the most graphically engaging deck either, so I'm going to yell at you if I see you falling asleep. All right, so junior year, I understand all of you are juniors, right? Yeah. This timeline is going to start from last August. It's now April, okay? That should not give you anxiety, okay? Don't let me heighten your anxiety with that. Just think of this as the list of things. If you haven't started doing this, it is not too late. If you have not done these things on these first couple of slides, it's not too late. It's just now time to start doing some of them. Fair enough? Because nobody at this point in time here in your junior year are so far behind that you cannot catch up easily. It's just a matter of knowing what the things you ought to accomplish in your junior year are, and now get to work doing them. Fair enough? What standardized tests do you all take? CLT. You take CLT. We also took the PSAT. You did? So that's done. Some of you? You all did. They all took it. Some of you think you took it. Some of you are convicted. You did not take it. Maybe you were sick that day. Yeah. Got it. PSAT is good. I'm glad you took that test, even if it doesn't test you on the things that are most important for your education. My kids will take the CLT as well. It's a great test. I know the founder and the inventor of that exam, so I'm glad that you're taking that. It's a good test. Okay. Hopefully the PSAT gave you some sense of where you would land if you were to take a SAT or an ACT, because they test very similar things. Here's the thing about those college entrance exams. The college entrance exams, most colleges and universities a couple of years ago went to test optional. So it actually didn't matter if you had one of those test scores. Okay? Many now have returned to using that test in some way, shape, or form. The test is often utilized to determine what your merit academic scholarship will be. I'm going to say that one more time. Your test score will often be a factor in what your merit scholarship award will be. So it's important that you take that test and actually take it seriously and do the best you can. It can mean the difference of, let's call it $10,000 to $20,000 over the course of the 4 years that you're in higher education. So it's a big deal. No reason, don't get test anxiety just because it has that impact. It'll still be fine, but I want you to be aware that test does matter, and so you should take it seriously, okay? Including the CLT. Most colleges and universities that do consider that, the test can only benefit you. But here's one bit of advice as you're kind of taking notes in your head. Don't automatically send the CLT to a school. I'm going to say that again. Don't automatically send it to this school. Wait until you get your results. Then, once you've seen your results and are confident, yes, I feel proud of that result, I'm confident that that's as well as I can do, then send it along to those institutions that confirm for you. It will only help your scholarship. It will not impact it negatively. Does that make sense? They'll give you a scholarship, a merit scholarship, when they admit you, likely based exclusively on your AC or your GPA. Okay? And then, I'll get to you in a second, I see you. Then, if you send that test score later on, if they're a test optional school, then you have the option to potentially increase your merit scholarship. Most institutions will not penalize you and lower your scholarship if you send that score later on. Does that make sense? So there's your first tip. Yes, young man?
What does it mean if your test negatively affects you? Do you have to pay more money?
Yeah, so it would mean they would lower your merit scholarship. Oh. So let's say they gave you $20,000 a year based on your GPA. Then you send your test score in. Most institutions will say, even if that test score would lower you into a lower merit scholarship bracket, say to $18,000 a year, they'll keep you there. But you want to confirm that before you send it in. And make sure, again, you want to be proud of that result before you start sending it to schools. Even if you can sign up to send that automatically to schools, I would not do that until you see your result. Fair enough? That way it'll leave time in this timeline for you to send it later on. When do you take the CLT? This month? Great. So
2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. So that's good news because that's now in your junior year. You will have plenty of time to determine, am I proud of this test result or should I schedule a time to take another CLT later on? Which some people do. Sometimes you just have a bad day on that test day. So take it again and then send that result. Fair enough? All right. And then do begin asking the Lord just actually enter into prayer for this. What are you asking of me, Lord? What are you moving my heart toward? And be attentive to what signals, what cues the Holy Spirit has given you about what might be asked of you here in this next stage in your life. That would be important. How many of you have had a conversation, a real, authentic conversation with your parents or guardians about paying for college? Awesome. So it looks like most of you. If you have not, I would prioritize that. Find a way to make sure that that happens if college is something that you want to at least contemplate. Get a realistic picture of what you can afford as a family and how you're going to navigate that, who's going to pay for what. Okay, do you have a question, young man? Nope, you. Yes, you. Do you have a question?
No.
Not you, right in front of you. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Okay, so make sure that if you know how much you will actually pay for your education, it's much easier to navigate which schools ought to end up on your list. Okay? Please, everybody listen to me. You're at a private high school. I suspect this is not news to you, but do not eliminate schools from your list merely because of their sticker price. No matter what your parents say about what you can afford, don't just eliminate a school because on their website, if you can find how much they say they cost, it says $60,000 a year or whatever. I promise you for every single school that you will find that says that their sticker price is $60,000 a year for all of you to attend. Not one student pays that unless they live outside the United States and come into the United States to go there for school. Not one domestic student actually pays that sticker price. Okay? There's a whole other presentation on college affordability that if I get through this fast enough, I can talk through some of that with you. But do not eliminate a list from you, no matter what the result of that conversation, who's paying for what. That's clear. Clarifying in a number of ways, but don't let it be the reason why you say, I can't attend a private school, I can't afford that. Not necessarily the case. Fair enough? All right. And you've already passed December, so you've already made your finals count, so I won't stress that point. All right. Essentially, the last couple of months before this one, what should you have been doing? You're at Chesterton, so you're involved in fine arts, lots of things. You're going to have a great resume coming out of this institution, so you don't have to worry tremendously about that, okay? It looks like you have already been preparing to take your CLT. It's in a couple of weeks, so the hay is in the barn to some degree, so you'll do that pretty soon. Your first draft of college entrance essays. Many colleges and universities do not require an essay. The college application the common application often does have one. And some of the more selective institutions do have an admission essay which does play a factor in whether you get admitted or not. So depending on what types of institutions you're considering, you may spend some time beginning to draft your college entrance essay. Okay? Just an initial draft would be advisable for you to begin creating and have in hand before you exit your junior year. All right? And then prioritizing that college list, which really has to happen after you've had that initial affordability conversation with your parents. You can start to refine that a little bit. Let me just do a pulse test, though, on this group. For those of you who are anticipating that college might be an option, how many of you have a list in your head of some of the institutions, maybe 5, 6, 10, a dozen that you're considering? Most of you? Okay, that would be the thing that you would want to have in place before you go into the summer as well. Okay? Have I told you anything that's not common sense to this point? Is this giving you some value? I'm seeing some nodding heads, so I'll take that as affirmation. Thank you. Okay, so now let's get to right now. At this point in time, you are scheduled to take the CLT. That's an important step so that for those institutions that do require it, you have it in hand. Okay? And you can begin reaching out to a lot of the colleges and universities to request information, that sort of thing. Most of you, let's just do a raise of hands again. Have you reached out to the institutions of college and universities that you're interested in to get on their mailing list? Submitted your information? Fewer hands. Okay? For those of you who have not, go to that institution's website, and there will be some sort of a button on every institution's website that says inquire or request more information. Do that for the schools that you are interested in. They will then send you information about that school. It will begin to shape for you what that institution is and what they represent, and it'll begin helping you to discern, is this a place where I could actually see myself? Okay? How they position themselves when they market to you, and it is advertising, but that'll say a lot about who that school is. Okay? So I would encourage all of you, get on the mailing list for those institutions that you are in fact interested in. You'll get stuff from tons of places that you didn't express interest in, but make sure you're on the list for those that you are actually interested in. Okay? How many of you have begun to research or apply for external scholarships? Very few, maybe one. Does that phrase even mean anything to you, external scholarships? Okay? Colleges, this is, again, goes into affordability, but colleges and universities offer a significant financial aid package to just about every student that walks through their doors. But there are millions upon millions of dollars of scholarships from outside entities that you could apply for, could research and apply for yourselves. For all sorts of, I see you, for all sorts of special interests, for all sorts of topics, you can find these scholarships and apply for them. Much of that money goes undistributed, unawarded every year because students just don't know to take the time to research them, find which ones they would qualify for and apply. Okay? Something as simple like a Google search for scholarships.com will get you to a list of those. Fastweb.com will get you to a list of those scholarships, and then you can create a little profile for yourself, say who you are, what your parents do, that's where you're from, that sort of thing. And it'll start to prioritize a list of scholarships that you might qualify for that you could apply for. Okay? Often it's something like a $500 scholarship. Doesn't feel like it's worth it, but I've seen students come in with a dozen of those $500 scholarships. That adds up fast. Okay? So if you are willing to invest the time, you can help to pay for your own education in a significant way if you just will research those scholarships and actually go through the application process. Fair enough?
Do you have any recommendations on finding like real and good scholarships? Because there's a lot of scam websites where it's like, oh, no essay scholarship, and then, but do you have any recommendations for finding actual scholarships?
Yes and no. There's a lot of trash out there, and I recognize that. Some of it just have to be being a good, wise, prudent sort of discerner as you navigate this information. An authentic and reputable website is fastwebaltogether.com. Fastweb.com. So that would be one place to go. If you find something there, it's better, more likely that it's trustworthy than if you find on a lot of other resources, just like a simple Google search or something like that. Okay? Fastweb.com. Good? All right. Mentions retaking the CLT, so if that's in fact necessary for you, to do that. And then do some virtual college visits. One outcome of COVID is most colleges and universities created a virtual visit on their admissions page of their website. So you can go through those experiences, get a visual picture. It's not going to be the same as being there in person, but you can get a look at what that college or university would look like. Again, start to see if this institution really does belong on your list, your prioritized list. And then prepare for summer. And if your family encourages you to work, you can find that part-time job. Put a little money away for your college experience as well. And plan for some college visits over the summer as well. So begin talking to your parents at this point in time about when you can schedule some time to go and visit some of the campuses that are on your list. Because there is nothing that will help to refine that list more than going and visiting those schools. I'm going to go to the next slide, but I'm going to pause here real quick. Because now we get into the summer. Now this is future focusing, right? Actually beyond where you're at right now. Hopefully something that I've said to all of you has some value, but I'm going to pause real quickly. Any questions on what's been presented so far? You can continue asking questions as they come to you as well. But any questions so far? Any more clarifications you want? Yes, sir.
So since we already take the CLT, would you recommend taking the ACT or the SAT in addition?
Sure. The CLT will be more reflective of the type of education you receive here at Chesterton. My anticipation then is for the majority of you, it will represent your learning more effectively. You'll have better scores on the CLT than you would on one of the other two tests. Just in general, as a generalization, a stereotype. That said, for some of you who are really naturally gifted in standardized tests, if you know that about yourself, if you did really well in the PSAT, for example, there may be value in taking one of those two other tests just so you can still more demonstrate your capacity, your academic sort of prowess to a college that might be more selective. So it's kind of a maybe so, maybe not, depending on who you are as a learner and just how well you do on those standardized tests typically. Fair enough? Good question. Any others? Yes?
Do all colleges take the CLT?
No. Oh! Yes, thank you. It took me a second. I was anticipating the question that didn't come out of your mouth. Most will now. The CLT has grown a lot. Jeremy Tate, the founder, has done a really nice job. There may be some, typically a large public institution, that initially will say the what? They just won't be as familiar. Where a lot of the Catholic schools, all of the Newman Guide schools would be deeply familiar with the test and would receive it readily. So it'll depend a little bit, but there is a very strongly researched concordance table where any institution that doesn't immediately express understanding of what it is, they should be able to, with a little bit of pushing from you, find how that would correlate to an ACT or an SAT relatively easily. So if they don't, push them a little bit, they should be able to manage it now. Yes?
As far as looking for external scholarships, one of the things I've noticed so far is it seems that a lot of us will automatically not count for a great percentage of them just from being like a white male in a relatively stable, moderately high income household. Do you have any advice for finding external scholarships that apply to us?
Fastweb.com, that as one example, should allow you to offer your profile, including all of the demographic attributes, much of which I would actually, represent myself as well, right? So I'm familiar with what you're putting down here. And it will filter out those scholarships for which you would not qualify. Admittedly, there will be a number of them for which you don't. And you just, rather than, stewing in resentment over that fact, the cultural fact that is the case just now, focus your time on those few that are a possibility for you. And fear not, because the scholarship packages that colleges and universities will award you are still going to be, in many instances, really competitive anyway. So all is not lost if you don't find yourself with $10,000 of external scholarships, right? Fear not. Yes?
So, correct me if I'm wrong. I forget which one it was. The University of Minnesota?
Mm-hmm.
A while back, they did a certain percent if you would a certain race, I forgot which one. If you were that, you got a percent off your college admission. I'm assuming that there would be other scholarships like that. If there is that, would you recommend like a DNA test? It's an honest.
Indigenous peoples often do have scholarships specific to them. If you have any expectation that you might have some tribal nation heritage or ancestry, there actually might be some value in doing that. Because even if not scholarships specifically, often the tribal nations will have certain calculations about some of the tribal money that might be available to you as well. That would be the one particular instance in which I would say it might be worthwhile, and others probably not, honestly. It happens to be the one where there's the most funding available. Young man?
So if you apply, for external scholarships and you get some of them, does the school that you apply to take those into account when factoring how much you pay and how much they might give you?
Great question. Sometimes. I think it's shady. So my recommendation is don't tell the college or university, when you're putting together your resume or whatever, don't tell the college or university that you're applying to that you've received the scholarship until after they've awarded you your financial aid package. Good? All right. This summer, so as you look ahead to this summer, to the next several months after you do a great job on your final exams here and close out your junior year well, develop that financial plan with your parents. Confirm who's paying for what and how much approximately. Okay? Who's paying for what and how much? That'll be an important part of the conversation. While it's not in this deck, I'm going to double click on that here in a minute. And then schedule and begin college visits. Please, students, find 2 or 3 colleges or universities, even if they're not the top ones on your list, just the ones that are most convenient to go to. Go and visit some colleges and universities this summer if you have any anticipation that college might be in your future. Go and visit this summer. Okay? If you've already visited some, so much the better. More power to you. But this summer, make sure that you've seen a couple of campuses before you enter into your senior year. It will dramatically refine what institutions you still want to consider as you go through the rest of this senior year and finish out your decision. Make sense? All right. What was I going to say about affording college? Financial plan. Oh, I can't imagine that they let you have phones, right? If you had your phone, I could have you pull up Google right now and search for any college or university on your list. Okay? I'm tempted to just do it.
Just do it.
All right. So I'm going to hop out of this deck here. Oh, I can't. I'm not connected to the internet. So if you had your phones, you could pull up a Google search for any now Google is a search engine, for any college or university on your list. And on the right-hand side, if you're on your phone, it would be just the first search result will be the Google-created information box for that entity. Okay? Within that is one column that says net price. Net price. You all understand the concept of gross and net, right? The net price is the average price that a student pays to go to that institution. For a private school, it will typically be about half of what the sticker price is on their website. In many cases, quite a bit more. Now, there's a whole presentation. As I said, I'm anticipating that there might be some questions about this, but I want to make sure you leave this presentation with that knowledge. Most colleges and universities will try to, there's a shell game that occurs in affordability for college. Really high sticker price to make you think this is a great quality education because we have a perception that the more something costs, the better it is. So they play into that, and then they discount the heck out of it to make you think that you're getting a great deal. That is how private and colleges and universities work. Okay? Don't get fooled by that. Actually look at the average price that students pay so that you have that information. That's the supplementary information you need when you talk to your parents about how much you can afford. Because they might not know that. And they might say, there's no way we can afford blank XYZ private institution. Okay? And you can say, no, actually we can because most students pay half the amount that you're thinking they do. Fair enough? All right, good. Senior year. How am I doing on time? What time are they done? 15. Got it. Senior year, I'm going to fly through senior year because you're still pretty far away. The number one thing in the next couple of months I want you all to do is to plan out some college visits and actually go. All right? Do well in the CLT, finish out your junior year strong, plan out some college visits, actually go. That'll clarify a lot of things. The senior year, in August, do additional research on those schools that are still on your selection list, that you're still under consideration. Try to find a way to engage with a faculty member, for example, within your program of interest. Talk to a professor. That can be very clarifying for you as you're trying to figure out which ones you want. If you have to do a retake of the ACT, SAT, or CLT, forgive me for not putting it up there, that would also be a good thing. And as I've said, the college affordability conversation with your parents, making sure that's locked down. In September is when you should be filling out all of your applications for all of the schools that are in your selection set. Some of them will open even earlier. You can certainly get it done sooner. But September, applications for admission for all of your schools should be open. Some will also have a separate financial aid application, which will often have a deadline in the fall sometime. So September of your senior year is the time to make sure your applications are submitted. Got it? God bless you. Sorry, didn't hear it. Let's see. Requesting letters of recommendation. Many colleges and universities will not request them. Very selective universities will. If you need to ask a faculty member, one of your teachers or somebody else to submit for you a letter of recommendation, do it with appropriate respect and decorum. Fair enough? And then if you have any institutions that are on the common application, that is one of the other applications you should complete during that time. The common application is you fill out one application, you can send it, that same form, to dozens of institutions. Okay, so St. Mary's University of Minnesota, for example, the institution I represent accepts the common application. That can be an easy way to save your time so you don't have to fill out 15 individual applications for 15 different institutions. Okay, good. Questions on this one so far? Your fall of your senior year? Okay. Moving a little bit further in, you're going to send in your common app in October. That's when it actually opens, but you'll have already filled that out. How many of you know what the FAFSA is? A smattering of you. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It's a relatively complex form, even though they say it's simple, it's not all that simple. Something you have to fill out with your parents, probably, parents or guardians, whoever claims you as a dependent on their taxes. You submit that, and the federal government does a complicated formula that tells them how much federal student aid you will qualify for. Common misconception, all of you will qualify for something. All of you will qualify for something, every one of you. At the maximum, or at the minimum, it will be a loan. But you do have to, in order to qualify for that loan, which is arguably the best one that you will encounter, it's better than a private loan typically, you do have to fill out the FAFSA, okay? A good number of you, more than is often known, will qualify for grant money as well, which is free money that you don't have to pay back to the federal government. But oftentimes colleges and universities, including my own, will use the FAFSA, and if the federal free money, the grant money, runs out, they will supplement institutional grant money to fill in the gap. So we will help with those middle income families, for example, who would not qualify for federal Pell Grants, and we'll try to supplement a little bit for those who wouldn't qualify there, but still could use a little bit of extra help. So need-based aid can come in both a state form, as well as a federal form, or the Minnesota state form, or from the institution itself. So it's worth filling out that FAFSA in almost every instance. It can never hurt you, certainly can help you. And that's the FAFSA. You would typically, in a normal year, submit it and fill it out in October. This year was a total mess, and thankfully you won't have to encounter any of that. God willing. Okay, questions on FAFSA? Okay, let's see. Also, in your fall semester, you can send in high school transcripts and potentially your test scores to colleges and universities so that they make sure that they can get you admitted. So you'll actually send in your academic records so then they can make their admission decision as well. Typically, that can happen off of the completion of your junior year. So usually an admission decision can be made just with the completion of your junior year's grades on the transcript. But you do need to send that official record to your institutions. Do you always use parchment or something like that, John, to execute that? Yeah.
Usually it's just me sending it.
Good. So a manual process, but you do have to go and request that transcript be sent to these other institutions. Fair enough? Okay. And then in the spring, this is when most of you will make the decision on where you're going to go. I'm not going to go through every bullet on this list. Instead, I'd rather entertain some questions from the group. But this would be the time when you would receive a financial aid package from these colleges and universities that would lay out your specific costs for attending that institution. And it's the closest thing you'll get to an apples-to-apples comparison on that financial cost. I recognize finances is not everything when you're making this decision. We're at a faith-based environment. I know that there's more important things. But finances do weigh into this. And so the next slide, I'll just show a quick presentation of what that might look like so you know what to expect. But spring is when you'll actually get those award packages from the institutions that you've been accepted to. Fair enough? And typically, once you have that, that's when then the institution will ask you to make a decision. I know it's small and you can't see this, but on the right-hand side is an example of St. Mary's University financial aid package for a real student. Okay? It's too small to read, and I recognize that, but at the very top you would see estimated direct expenses. So that's how much the sticker price would be to attend St. Mary's University of Minnesota. Below that, you would see financial aid offered. This would be the free money that you do not have to pay back. That could include, and often does, for almost every institution that you would apply to, a merit-based scholarship based on your grades, so an academic scholarship. Then any additional need-based grants that the university would be offering, again based on your FAFSA. Then they would offer state grants, which if you're going to a school in the state of Minnesota, for example, can be pretty considerable, even for a middle-income family. Okay? And then Pell Grant and a number of other things. So these are all the scholarships or the grants. Both mean monies that you do not have to pay back. At St. Mary's University of Minnesota, an example of this would be, because you're graduating from a Chesterton Academy, a Catholic school, you would have an extra $1,000 scholarship every year because of where you graduated from. Okay? If you visited the campus, there would be an extra $1,000 scholarship because you came down and visited campus. That would show up there on the monies you did not have to pay back, and it's just cut off the top. Down below are the loans. Loan, I know it's a four-letter word, but most students do have to take out a loan to attend college or university. That is not a failure. You want to make sure that you're minimizing the amount that you have to borrow, but that is not a failure if you do in fact have to borrow to attend a college or university. Okay? As long as you finish, then you have the the earning ability to pay off those student loans with a legitimate profession or vocation. So for that reason, I wouldn't dissuade you there from taking loans if in fact that's necessary for your family's financial situation. So loans would come next. And then you see that red line, which is the balance. What would be due after that? You're trying to get one of these from every one of your institutions in order to make an informed financial decision. The only way to do that is to fill out the FAFSA or tell the college or university you're not going to bother, which for some of you makes sense, and to get admitted. And in the spring, you will get one of these for every one of those institutions. And now it's the closest thing you're going to have to an apples-to-apples comparison to say, what would I pay at XYZ institution? What would I pay at this other institution? Does that make sense? And now you've got the actual dollar amounts to compare. One trick. On those total loans, some colleges and universities, the same way that some of them will take your external scholarships and take them off the top, some of them will add an extra loan in there called a Parent Plus loan, because they're trying to make that red simple arithmetic number as low as possible. So they'll add a third loan in so it looks like you're paying less out of pocket when in fact you're just borrowing more. So that's one trick when you're comparing these things. Make sure you're looking at the loans and make sure that's comparable. Otherwise you have to redo the math for them. Make sense? If not, you can grab me afterwards. But this you want to get from every institution. That's what's coming up in the spring to inform your decision. Okay? My last slide is a passage from Scripture just to remind you that with all of this, if I've made any of you yet more anxious, God has a plan for your life, and He's guiding you, even if it feels stressful. So trust in Him as you're going through this process. With that, I'm going to pause for additional questions that any of you might have. It can be about the process, can be about St. Mary's, whatever you got. Yes?
So, I know you said that you also had another slideshow on the financial package and all that.
Yep.
And you have this one. My main question is it available for us to basically revise and see those if you're not here and look them over?
Yeah, I'm happy to share slides. If all of you campaign, have John have me back, and then I can talk to you about college affordability as well. Happy to be of assistance to you. I know you're between guidance counselors. If I can be of any assistance, even if you're not interested in St. Mary's University, if any of you have a question, use me as a resource. I serve as the Vice President for Enrollment Management at St. Mary's University. Sometimes takes me a little while to get to emails, but working with individual students is one of my favorite things I get to do in my job. So if you reach out to me, John will have my contact information. He can share it with you and make sure we can get your questions answered about the process, okay? And I'll be back probably today. We actually have some exciting developments at St. Mary's University of a partnership, a collaboration with the Vatican that we're announcing later today. So I have to get back to our Minneapolis campus here in a little while. But I plan to come back and be present for Mass and lunch so that if any of you have individual questions about either process or St. Mary's specifically, we can talk about that. Okay? What else? Oh, come. Somebody's got a question. Yes, John.
How do I figure out what to major in?
Yeah.
All right. Good. So maybe the first thing I would say is you'll get asked that question a dozen times every time you're on a college or university campus. It's only because it's one of the easy questions that we have to ask you. If you don't know, you can legitimately say, I'm not sure. Don't do what I did. I chose my major because I was a pretty good student going into college, and I kind of sloughed off in my English writing class. In my first semester, I got my first B. All the rest were A's. So I got mad, and out of spite, I chose English as my major. Don't do that. But in seriousness, to lessen the stress and anxiety of it, it honestly doesn't matter. I have 2 degrees in English, and I'm an executive in higher education. There's not a direct correlation in every instance. But it does make some sense to discern in prayer what God has gifted you with, where you're naturally inclined, and what types of work you can see being fulfilling in your life. Okay? That is a worthwhile exercise right now. Even if you find pockets of majors, groupings of majors, that can be deeply helpful as you go into this next phase. I hope that's at least a gesture of a response. Yes?
So if a degree doesn't directly help you into getting into the career path you'll eventually go into, what exactly does it do?
Yeah. In the case of English, well, I'm trying to debate how long an answer I want to give to you. If you do something in the humanities, it's very akin to what you do here. It helps you to fit into any profession with grace and poise and prudence. Okay? It gives you the capacity of mind to be able to think your way through any number of professions you might ultimately find yourself in. So there's nothing wrong with pursuing a degree in the humanities because basically leaves everything open. You become a good human person who can think well. So that's positive. But most of the skills you'll learn in any one of the particular professions are going to be outdated in 5 years anyway. You're preparing for your first job, and then you'll have to find the experience and advanced education to continue to find yourself into the career path you ultimately choose. So it's not like you're locked in after you get that one degree. Your work experience as well as additional education will continue to guide your path through your career and to ultimately the job that will be your calling. Whether that's formal graduate education or any number of other things as well. Okay? Yes?
So this might be a dumb question, but you mentioned drafting an essay.
Yeah.
What all should we mention in that? And
Yeah, good. Not a dumb question. If you think of it as a statement of purpose or goals, that would be a good way of framing that. Statement of purpose or your goals. What are you hoping to experience or to get out of your college education, and why are you pursuing this? That would be a good prompt, if you will, to think about how to pursue that college essay. Some of those college essays will be slightly more refined, but that would be a good prompt. I'll get to you. I know that some of you might have to go. Amen.
Two last things to say real quick. One's here, round of applause.